Our exhibition design for King Records centers around each space in our exhibit being representative of a step in the vinyl record-making process in accordance with how King Records would have approached manufacturing. Through this design, we intend to educate the visitor about the record-making process and spark conversation through a narrative that includes the history of struggle and how King Records succeeded despite rampant war, poverty, and racism. We want to create an exhibition that inspires visitors to pursue their goals and refuse to let obstacles stand in their way, just like Sid Nathan did with King Records. These are some projects that inspired color, lighting, and experiences in 4 different elements of our exhibition. In terms of the organization of our exhibition, since each space represents a step of the record-making process, the spaces are in sequential order of these steps. Each space will describe the step it represents through artifacts, audio, and/or interactive media content. Within these spatially represented steps will be a carefully woven narrative regarding the social climate between the 1950s and 1970s under which King Records operated. This narrative will be presented in chronological order via video clips and other media scattered throughout the spaces. The projectors and lighting will be housed within a modular grid system that we designed into our exhibit. This grid system operates in numerous ways throughout our exhibit, as a system for display, a spatial divider, mounting for lighting and projectors, and as an overall aesthetic device. This grid is slightly visible from the entrance of the museum, but fully reveals itself by the end of the exhibition. With all of this information in mind, let's take a closer look at the individual spaces. As you enter King Records, your curiosity is first piqued by a hallway with suspended screens displaying video footage of mainstream culture beginning to form in the 1940s. At the end of the hallway will be an interactive jukebox that plays through a rotation of songs recorded at King Records. This space functions as a preface to what the visitor is about to be shown in the exhibition. As the visitor moves into the next room, the first topic is introduced: recording and producing music. This room will showcase the equipment that was used to record artists at King Records. There will be a series of microphones on display in the center of the room. At the back wall of the room will be a projection that shows how a King Records recording and producing space would have looked. In front of this would be a touchscreen device that simulates a mixing board that a producer at King Records would have used. Through the touchscreen device, the visitor will be able to manipulate effects on a series of audio clips. Along the side walls of the space, there will be curved screens that show King Records recording sessions overlaid on images of the master to introduce the process. The next step in the sequence is the lacquers processing room. In this space, the visitor will learn about the nickel and silver solutions that a record master is coated with during manufacturing. The space features 4 pedestals with tanks on the upper halves. These tanks will contain the metal solutions and a carriage mechanism that will submerge the record master at the push of a button. This interactive feature will be complemented by a series of screens which display footage and imagery of important musical technology advancements made in the 1950s. Objects such as the RCA synthesizer and the transistor radio will be representative of the inventive and industrious attitudes which accelerated the post-war economy and contributed to the success of King Records. After exiting the lacquers processing area, the visitor is confronted by the film room. In this room, there will be a short film projected onto the ceiling and walls with accompanying sound. This will give occupants the feeling of full immersion as the projected video and audio surrounds them. The media being projected will be a critique of the musician and record label lifestyle between the 1950s and 1970s. Visitors will be encouraged to lounge on large pillows so that they can easily look up towards the ceiling and back wall of the space where the film will be projected. The next space in the exhibition is representative of the molding portion of the record-making process. Within the molding process, there are 3 sub-steps involved in creating the final mold. The visitor will be able to stand in between 4 half circles that correspond to these sub-steps. While inside the half circles, the visitor will be able to hear audio about each of them. To the right will be video projections pertaining to counterculture events and music that occurred in the 1960s. Moving across the axis of the whole building, the next space focuses on the hole punch step in the record-making process. This enclosed space features 5 arches that decrease in scale at the center, causing the visitor to feel as though they are punching the hole through the record themselves. In the first half of the space, media content regarding the beginning of the Vietnam War and the problems created by the United States government around the time will be displayed on the inside of each translucent plexiglass arch. There will be a curtain in the center arch to further develop the feeling of punching the hole, as the visitor will have to physically push through material. When the visitor crosses over to the second half, the imagery shifts to show the end of the war, and there will be an opportunity to take a moment in the transition space before proceeding. This will continue the discussion regarding the social climate under which King Records was born. The visitor will then move out of the hole punch area and directly into a curved corridor that becomes increasingly more compressed as it continues. There will be projections on the walls and floor from above that will show the culmination of all previously shown events from the exhibition. The combination of both the physical compression of the space and the intense media will cause the visitor to feel slightly overwhelmed. This overwhelming feeling is the emotional peak of the museum, because at this point, the visitor has been shown all of the record-making process and the social context that surrounds it. With this new web of information having been presented, we hope to encourage visitors to reflect upon the past in order to truly appreciate what King Records was able to accomplish despite the obstacles that it faced. At the end of this compressed corridor, the visitor has the option of turning the corner, where they will be presented with a fully enclosed space that houses stations with interactive keyboards. These keyboards will be able to simulate instruments that were used in King Records, and there will be a selection of roughly 6 instruments that visitors can cycle through at each station. The visitor will be able to mimic these sounds and tones while creating an arrangement all of their own. When played, the keys at each station will trigger movement of different colors on the ceiling, causing visitors to feel as though they are creating something together. When the visitor exits the enclosed keyboard area, they will have arrived at the final portion of the exhibition. In this area, the focus is strictly on artifacts and information directly from King Records. As referenced before, this is the point when the visitor gets a full look at the modular grid system. On display within the grid system will be instruments and equipment that were used at King Records. For example, Freddie King's guitar, a Wurlitzer piano, and an authentic tape recorder. On opposing sides of the display cases are accordion-style panels that focus on all of the genres of music and many artists within each genre to provide visitors with a more holistic idea of the accomplishments made over a 30-year period. At the center of the exhibition space is an audio station labeled "What Made King Records Successful?" The visitor will be able to listen to 8 different tracks of people speaking from the King Records documentary. This will hopefully encourage visitors to reflect on how diversity and inclusion within King Records played a major role in the success and achievements of the label. At this point, the exhibition is concluded and the visitor is sent forth bearing new knowledge and a desire to create.